These lessons come as a part of my software called the Flash Brain Anatomy. You can go down there, I put the link down there in the description. You can purchase the software and watch the full full compilation of my lessons. After it exits the insula, it spreads all over the place. Like, it supplies the frontal lobe, it supplies the parietal lobe, and the temporal lobe. However, we can easily we can group these arteries in two groups: the inferior ones and the superior ones. So the ones that go downwards and supply the temporal lobe are the inferior ones. Okay, so here I will illustrate. The first branch is called the anterior temporal branch. Okay, then we have the middle temporal branch. It goes something like this. We have the posterior temporal branch. Okay, and we also have the parieto-occipital branch. So those were the inferior ones. We have the anterior temporal branch, we have the middle temporal branch, the posterior temporal branch, and the parieto-occipital branch. Okay, so then there is also an artery of the angular gyrus here, branch of the angular gyrus branch, and we also have the anterior parietal artery here. This was the anterior parietal artery. Okay. These lessons come as a part of my software called the Flash Brain Anatomy. You can go down there, I put the link down there in the description. You can purchase the software and watch the full full compilation of my lessons. Then there is an artery of the postcentral sulcus. Okay, here in the postcentral sulcus. This was the central sulcus. Okay, and this is the postcentral sulcus. Then comes the artery of the central sulcus here, and the artery of the precentral sulcus. So this was the precentral sulcus where the artery goes right now. Postcentral sulcus artery here. We had the artery of the central sulcus and the artery of the precentral sulcus. Then comes the prefrontal artery, somewhere over here. And then we have the lateral frontabasal artery. Then we have the anterior cerebral artery. Okay, it looks something like this. I will paint it in purple color. And here is the anterior communicating artery that connects these two anterior cerebral arteries. Remember, this was the posterior communicating arteries, and this one over here is the anterior communicating artery. These lessons come as a part of my software called the Flash Brain Anatomy. You can go down there, I put the link down there in the description. You can purchase the software and watch the full full compilation of my lessons. Okay, now I will show you how these anterior arteries supply this part of the brain here, and I will illustrate each branch and each artery. The anterior cerebral artery goes here, and when it reaches here, it separates into pericallosal artery that goes here around the corpus callosum, called the colosso-marginal artery that goes here around the cingulate gyrus, and up there it gives here, this part is called the cingulate branch. The pericallosal artery gives the paracentral branch here and the paracuneal branch here. Now, before the anterior cerebral artery separated here, we had the medial frontabasal artery here, and just remember that this was the lateral frontabasal artery. And if we go from the medial point of view and look at the frontal lobe, we will see the medial frontabasal artery. Then there was the polar frontal artery, and then, as I said, there is a frontal anteromedial branch, and then comes the frontal intermedio-medial branch, and then we have the frontal posteromedial branch here. As I said before, this was the cingulate branch. These lessons come as a part of my software called the Flash Brain Anatomy. You can go down there, I put the link down there in the description. You can purchase the software and watch the full compilation of my lessons. So there you go, I just explained you how the brain is supplied with blood. So we have the blood coming from the internal carotid artery here and supplying mostly this part of the brain where this anterior cerebral artery goes, and it also supplies the lateral side of the brain where the middle cerebral artery goes. We had the two vertebral arteries coming through the foramen magnum, joining to a basilar artery, and then supplying the posterior cerebral artery, and that is this one over here. These lessons come as a part of my software called the Flash Brain Anatomy. You can go down there, I put the link down there in the description. You can purchase the software and watch the full compilation of my lessons. It also includes interactive 3D anatomy and all the resources you need to learn the complete neuroanatomy without reading a single page from book. Thank you for watching this video. Please check out my website and purchase the software, or at least like, subscribe, or comment.